It's story time. In this episode, I'm talking with Karl Kahler, author of Manic Dawn, the strange adventures of a mad father and a loyal son. Together, we explore the ups and downs of bipolar disorder and uncover the lessons it offers about storytelling, action, creation, and life. This is my conversation with journalist and author, the loyal son himself, Karl Kahler. So your book is called Manic Dawn, which I think is it's the perfect title. I could go on and explain why I think that, but I'll let you do the answering. Why did you call the book Manic Dawn?
Well, I don't know if you were alive in the 1980s. There was a movie called Red Dawn. Red Dawn, about a communist invasion of the United States. And that guy from Ghost had to fight them off. So Red Dawn, the idea of dawn is a very soft, tranquil, the sun is rising, it's quiet. But manic is a very hard, jarring word. And so Manic Dawn would be kind of like a man who was kind of chilled out before, and then all of a sudden he is awoken with a passion, with a fury. So it's kind of like, yeah, jarring words. That the clash between those two words I always liked.
Yeah. And I'm probably reading into this, but I also thought it was a great title because with mania comes possibilities, comes a dawn is like, a new day, new things happening, stories being created. And when your dad was manic, and when any of us are, toward that side of high energy mania, the more it seems our storytelling machine sort of turns on, and we start to imagine possibilities and then act upon those things. And some of those are good and some of those are bad. And I think if you crank up the mania too high, our imagination and our storytelling machine gets a bit out of control, and bad things can happen, but also good things can happen.
Look at Ernest Hemingway. He was 100% bipolar. He died by suicide. But Ernest Hemingway, he won the Nobel Prize for literature for The Old Man and the Sea. He was he was a cauldron of creation. Vincent van Gogh, he sold one painting in his life, but he is possibly the greatest artist in the history of the world. Totally bipolar. Also shot himself. He was such a screw up, he shot himself in the stomach and it took him 3 days to die. Kurt Cobain, Nirvana, come as you are, totally bipolar, also shot himself with a shotgun. But man, his output, one album, two albums, like world tours. He was the biggest rock star in the world for a while. And he's like, okay, I'm out. I'm gonna check out. Yeah, there's a long history of manic people who are very creative when they're in the right zone. But if they get too crazy, damn, they get too crazy. They cut their freaking ear off. You don't want to get that crazy.
No, it makes me wonder because reading these crazy stories, these crazy adventures of you and your dad. Of course, your dad's sort of the big hero, the main actor in that, and you're sort of the sidekick in the story. But you have your own things going on as well. But yeah, like what he does, he has like all of the best human traits, the things that we need to be a great entrepreneur, to be a creative, to just be a happy, free human being. But he just pushes it. I mean, he doesn't push it. His biochemistry pushes it a bit too far, where things could kind of go the wrong direction. But yeah, it's a bit. It's great. He's fully human, but he's like too human. He's almost like this. It makes me wonder too. Like we want to be, individuals and free and in control of our life and bold and imaginative. But yeah, if you push that too far, disaster can occur. But
Have you heard of a play on Broadway called Hamilton? It's about Alexander Hamilton.
yeah, he was also bipolar, right?
He was totally bipolar, and guess how he died? In a fucking duel. Another man shot him with a gun because he was dueling with him. Yeah. Christopher Columbus. There are very good arguments to make. He was totally nuts, and he had delusions of grandeur. He thought that he was God's gift to discover the world, but also very cruel and a very, very evil person. Um, there's a long list. Winston Churchill. I love Winston Churchill, but he was also totally bipolar. He said that, "Oh, I don't like to get on a ship or I don't like to go to a train station because, I'm afraid that when the train comes, I'm just gonna jump in front of it. And if I get on a ship, I'm afraid I'll just jump overboard." Hemingway, before he shot himself, he escaped from a little plane that they were flying in, a little airport, and he ran toward a propeller plane with the propellers spinning to kill himself in the propellers, and they stopped him. But yeah, there is no population on Earth that commits suicide at a higher rate than bipolar people. You would think that strictly depressed people who never experience the happy manic highs, you would think they would be the most suicidal. No, the most suicidal are the bipolars who have the very low lows and the very high highs. And research shows that they tend, if they do commit suicide or attempt it, they tend to do it when they're starting to rise again. They come out of the trough, at the bottom of a trough of depression. You can barely get out of bed. You just can't function. But you get a little bit manic, start feeling better, and you can actually go and do things in life.
Yeah, when we talked last time, we did a little warm up call, and you mentioned how hey, you said, "Hey Mike, do you ever do narrative? Do you ever tell stories?" And I was like, "No," but
And you said, what do you mean?
I was like, "What do you mean? That sounds fun.
Yeah, what do you mean?
That sounds fun." But like, I'm not a storyteller, and you are a storyteller, and your dad is the ultimate storyteller. So it is in your DNA, and yeah, through that storytelling, he was able to create his life. I mean, it's bizarre because this book you say is not based on a true story. It is a true story, but it reads exactly like it could be fiction. Like the character, the villains, everything is happening is
I hope so. Like Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino could film it, right?
so who is the author? I guess your dad is the author, but where did he get these? How did this happen? How does a real life become, a fiction like story? I guess, yeah, like you said, it's with all these great people like Christopher Columbus sailing across the ocean, and Ernest Hemingway writing these things, and Andrew Carnegie creating these big companies, and all these people. They just imagine it, and they have these ideas of who they are, this character, and who the bad people are, and what's possible, and what they want to do, and they like just believe this story so much that it becomes real, and then you just sort of captured it. So it's really trippy. It's of like all these different layers of storytelling, starting from the brain of this bipolar person that makes it real, and then you write it.
Well, I would say that my dad was not the author. I was the author. He was the originator of me, first of all.
But what I mean though is he authored his life. He really authored his life. And in the way that an author writes a book, he I feel like he was doing that with his life. Whether he was doing it like he wanted to, or his brain just pushed him into it, he seemed to be not being written by society or by the other people, but it was like him. That's what I meant by that.
Yeah, well, he was really stable and really successful in his first few years until he in his early 30s. He had a PhD from the University of Arkansas in education administration, and he had a wanderlust. He had already lived in Venezuela with me and Paul and mom, in Canada and BC for 2 years after leaving Arkansas, and 2 years at two different towns in California. That's all before by the time I was 4 years old, I would lived in three countries and like six houses already. So he had a wanderlust, and he got his PhD and he got a job in Durango, Mexico. And his wife, my mom, was also very employable because she spoke really good Spanish, and she was an elementary school teacher and music teacher. And that was our life growing up, is that he was always the director in two different cities in Mexico, and then in Arkansas, and in Alaska, and back to Arkansas, and then Bolivia, and then he kind of retired from education. So he had a good run there as a really respectable and successful person. But yeah, there were times when he went totally nuts. And some of the reasons, we never lived more than 2 years in one place. Never. The whole time I lived with my mom and my dad, or even my dad or my brother, never more than 2 years in one place. Part of the reason for that was the mania that he would kind of get in trouble with people and have to leave town, or he just got too restless and he was bored and he wanted to get on and do something else, go somewhere else. sail a new sea, go to Alaska.
Yeah. In every, like, kind of good story, good movie, the character really wants something. He really cares about something, and he can't quite get it, but he thinks he can, and maybe he does in the end. What do you think your dad wanted more than anything else, or what are some of the things he really wanted?
I don't know, at times when he was manic, he thought that he was God's personal emissary on earth, and that God had empowered him to set things right. And, he was a righteous crusader. He was like a do-gooder adventurer. He was the ultimate good, bad Samaritan. And, he would launch into speeches in front of crowds, in front of strangers on the street. He would just suddenly start orating, delivering a speech to people. Or he would, one time we were in a thrift store and he said, "How much for everything?" And the lady looked at him and like, "What do you mean?" There were 2 racks of old clothes, cheap used clothes for sale. He said, "How much to buy out the whole store?" And she said, "Oh, gee, I'd have to check on that. Well, hold on a moment." He said, "Okay, you check on that." And meanwhile, there was another guy in the store. He said, "Hey, man, you got a nice watch." He said, "Oh, you like it? Here." He took the watch off and gave it to the man. Here, you take it. Guy goes, "Really? Yeah, 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 it's yours." Lady came back. I'm sorry, sir, but the whole store is not for sale." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." "Well, okay then." So he walked out the door and went on to the next adventure. But he was just wackadoodle like that, not harmful, not usually violent. Uh, but you did not want to get on his bad side. You did not want to F with Jerry Collar. He was the worst enemy in the world to have. But if you were on his side and you were under his wing or you were his son, nobody effed with Jerry. So it was kind of a safe place to be in a sense, even though he did some pretty dangerous things at times.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said in the book, you felt very safe with him. I wonder why. I mean, he was not scared of anything, and he would not take anything from anybody. I mean, even small little getting ripped off or getting his I think his big fear too, which is very clear in the book, or what he did not like, what he hated most maybe was getting things stolen from him or getting ripped off or being cheated or something. And then there would be revenge after revenge after justice.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Remember there's one story where he went up to Emporia, Kansas to visit me, and he was in a diner and he met this home not I don't know if she was homeless, but she was poor and she had 2 or 3 kids and she didn't have any money, and so he invited her to come sit with him in the diner in the seats there, and he bought hamburgers for everybody, and he asked the waitress for one just a hamburger patty, a raw hamburger patty to give to his dog in the car. Okay, so she gave him the raw hamburger patty to give it to his dog in the car, and then she charged 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hamburgers. And he said, "Wait, wait, wait, you're charging me full price for that single cold hamburger patty that I gave to my dog?" She said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, it's really the meat we charge for, so." But he said he didn't have any bread, pickles, bun, lettuce, onions, tomato, nothing, no cooking, no effort, no labor. She's like, "No, that's still the price we charge." So he takes out she says, "Okay, fine." She walks away. He takes out his pocket knife and carves huge holes in the vinyl bench that he's sitting on underneath his legs behind his knees. He totally vandalized this freaking diner because they overcharged him for that damn hamburger patty. He was nuts. He was totally nuts. It's hard to defend the many of the things he did, but he kind of thought that he was doing the right thing. He was teaching those people a lesson. He was teaching them how to be better.
Yeah. No, and I think these things he does are, um, like I read these, I'm like, well, I would kind of want to do some of those myself, but usually almost always I wouldn't act on such things, because it often involves like kind of a really destroying other people's property or hurting them or something. Not that he wants to hurt people or break their things, but I mean they in a way they deserve it sometimes. My favorite one is, when he went to the hotel room and, he threw everything out the window. That was hilarious.
I know, I know, I know. That was I know, I could I still to this day, God, I mean, if you give that to a movie director to film, it's just I mean, dangerous too. What hope there's no hobo down in the alley below, but he threw everything out that window, and not only that, he took the toilet paper, and he's got these huge, long arms, and he stuffed that toilet paper down into the toilet as deep as he could possibly shove it, and he turned on the bathtub full blast, and the sink full blast, both of them stopped up. So pretty soon the whole bathroom was full of water. And then he went out and he gathered up his stuff and he went out in the hall. He locked the door and he stuck a matchstick, a wooden matchstick, in the lock and broke it off so that they wouldn't be able to unlock the door to solve the flooding problem. And then he walked off in the night. Very, very, very bad behavior. Hilarious, yes. Um, ill-behaved, yes, also. Yeah. I'd like to get Matthew McConaughey to play him in the movies because Matthew is tall, he has a Southern accent, he already knows how to shoot, and he's already crazy as hell. So I think that'd be the perfect Jerry.
Yeah. Now, speaking of shooting, your dad loved guns. Guns were like one of the. They were not in every scene, but I mean, he seemed to always have some kind of weapon on him, and he would use these weapons.
Fortunately, he never used them on another human being except once in Costa Rica. And that was the worst thing he ever did in his life was he was accosted by a policeman in Palmar Sur, Costa Rica. And this policeman said, you're bothering people at the phones here. You come with me. And Jerry says, oh, why should I come with you? The guy goes, look at my pistol. He had an old, like a World War One style pearl handled revolver on his hip. He said, this is the reason. Jerry takes out a rice sack, throws off the sack, and he's got a 22 rifle inside. And he says, don't touch your pistol. And the cop freaked out and ran. And there's conflicting stories about exactly what happened. But there's no question that my dad ended up shooting him in the back twice. Fortunately, the guy survived. No major organs were hit, but he was definitely hit in the back, and he showed his wounds in court. Uh, but for dad, the way dad explained that to me is like, this guy's going to shoot me. This guy is reaching. This guy's reaching for his freaking revolver when I've got a rifle pointed at him. He is going to shoot me. And then the cop turned and ran, and dad said, well, I'll show him. And so he shot him first. By far, the worst thing he ever did. Normally, guns are like, it's like peace through strength. People know you have guns. They don't mess with you, right? The police in Hot Springs, Arkansas were terrified of my dad because they knew he had an armory. He had like 8 guns, including an AR-15, shotguns. He had spear guns, like fishing spear guns. He was a big hunter when he was young, hunting big game. Later, he regretted killing all those animals, and, he didn't hunt anymore, and fortunately, he never shot any other human beings.
Yeah, that's right. He would shoot objects like just shooting things in the field or some place where you can shoot objects. He did shoot up that guy's car, but he kind of had it coming to him anyway. Things like that. But yeah, objects, cars, and things like that. Right? Yeah, not people.
Yeah, his employee at the liquor store in Hot Springs was stealing liquor by the case, like 12 bottles of Johnny Walker, 12 bottles of Bacardi rum, 12 bottles of whatever and whatever. He just put them in his car, in his Lincoln Continental, drove them to his house, took them out of his car, and put them inside his house. And so my dad went by his house and he looked inside the guy's windows. He said, oh shit, there's like 4 or 5 cases of liquor in there that he stole from me. So yeah, that night I drove getaway. I was 16 years old. I barely knew how to drive, but he stood up through the sunroof of our Audi Fox. He told me to drive. He said, there's his house. That's the one. There's his car. And we turned at the corner and he said, okay, stop. And then he took 3 shots, boom, 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 into the passenger door of Bobby's Lincoln Continental. And guess what? Bobby did not come to work the next day.
What?
I can't believe it. I don't know. Maybe he was not feeling well.
He might have got a new job or I don't know. He got sick or I don't know. Who knows? Yeah.
Maybe he figured I'd been promoted out of this job. Dad, why didn't you just go to the police? Oh, the police are even worse. He's like, I'll deal with this. Don't worry. I'll deal with this. I teach people not to fuck with Jerry Kahler. Excuse my language, but
Well, I think that was part of it though. Like your dad had no trust with the police, and I don't know where that started from, but anything related to the police or the standard like arbitrary rules of society or any of that, he was like, it seems like he didn't think they could do their job, and so he had to do it because they couldn't do the things. They couldn't bring the justice, so he had to bring the justice, basically.
Yeah, I think you've got something going on there. One time, these two cops, Little Rock policemen, came to his door at his mother's house where he lived, and they said, "Oh, Jerry, you're Jerry Kahler. Yeah, we need to talk to you." He's like, "Oh, don't come in my house. Don't push in my door. I'll come outside and talk to you." And so they said, "Yeah, we're gonna take you to the state hospital. Yeah, there's a warrant for your arrest, and you need to be incarcerated." In a psychiatric facility because you are considered a danger to your loved ones. And he said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Well," they said, "Yeah, and we're going to get handcuffs and we're going to get leg irons." He said, "Leg irons? I've been in custody, no telling how many times, but they have never put me in leg irons." They said, "Yeah, it might be a good idea to use leg irons." So Dad grabs the big fat cop, the first one, in a chokehold, puts his elbow around him and around his throat, like in MMA, and he's got him. I mean, your dad is huge. He's 6 foot tall, and his wingspan from fingertip to fingertip, if he spreads his arms like Michael Jordan, is even more than 6 feet. He's got very big, strong arms. And the other cop comes in to help, and my dad grabs him and puts him in a leg lock. Got the other cop. He's got two uniformed armed policemen under his personal control, one in a leg lock and one in a headlock. And he takes out the gun of the fat one, and he said the guy wet his pants because he thought he was going to shoot him. And Dad said, I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid." He took the gun and he threw it as far as he could throw it, removing, the possibility of gunplay from the equation. The other cop couldn't reach his gun, but he was able to reach his radio, and he said, "Officers down, officers down." And Dad said 17 cops responded to that call on his mother's lawn. And of course, all the neighbors who've known him for years and years, like, "Oh my God, Jerry is really acting badly here." It took them forever to even to get him in the car, and then they took him to the psychiatric hospital, and they had to sedate him with Haldol, and he was not a good person to be on the wrong side of.
Yeah.
uh, but no officers were harmed in this crime, and in fact, he was never even charged as a result of this. He said he thought it was because the police were too embarrassed.
It seems like he didn't really want to do any of these crimes or whatever you want to call them. He just sort of had to. Like people were, messing things up, so he had to, clean it up. But it's interesting to kind of look on crime and itself too, because he wasn't doing anything to really be mean, but it looked really mean. And like if you just saw it, you'd be like, "Oh my God, that guy's a bad guy." But if you read the story, I mean, he's not a bad guy, but he will not back down, and he will not let people get away with crap, even if that means like breaking their stuff, setting it on fire, or stealing it, or shooting it up, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Fire. If he came so close to committing a murder when he wanted to set this lady's house on fire, and she was inside it fast asleep, and his lighter didn't work. He had a grudge against her because she had screwed him over in all kinds of ways and accused him of stealing from her when he wasn't. He's not a thief. He's never a thief. And then she stole a painting that we had had in our family since 1972, painted by a friend, an heirloom. She stole that and took it away. And he's like, "Ah." So he set out to start a fire in her garage with a bunch of paperback books, which he doused in, I think it was brake fluid. It was a flammable liquid used for cars. I think it was brake fluid, but his lighter didn't work. Thank God. Thank God. Lighter didn't work. He finally, "Hey, well, he tried two lighters. And when the second lighter didn't work, he said, "Well, maybe it's God. I think God is telling me not to do this. I think God is telling me not to burn this house down with that woman inside it." And so he walked off and went away. Thank God.
Yeah. No, but that's where that powerful imagination of his kind of comes in handy sometimes. We do want to just look at the world like as it is, which I don't think we can. But he would often, it seems, interpret things as signs from God, or God telling him this or that, or looking at things in a more divine way, and that was kind of a beautiful, but also it saved him sometimes, and sometimes it destroyed him. But like even like little things, like he was in the bathroom one day and he saw a little insect like crawling on the floor, or he saw this bat. This bat was flying while he's in the prison in Costa Rica, and it blew some wind on him. Simple little things, but he.
You have a great memory. You actually read the book. I'm so impressed.
Oh yeah, I read the book full. I really read the book. I really enjoyed the book. This is a book packed full of. I can't even. It's really hard to even talk about it because it's just there's too many amazing stories. And there's too much in it.
And speaking of God, I have psychiatric reports that say Plant is delusional, and he has been walking into churches in Little Rock and announcing that he's looking for a Christian woman to marry. I mean, he's totally beyond embarrassment. He loves to be the center of attention wherever he goes. He is charming, he is dashing, but he is, like, way, way, way overboard. You know, he would scare anyone. You know, he's scary because he has so total lack of inhibitions. You know, like telling a whole church, "Hello, I'm Jerry, and I love Jesus, and I'm looking for a Christian woman to marry."
No, complete confidence, like almost like overconfidence to where you're like, buddy, you got to stop. Like, you and him would go walk around and go, he would go like, hit on girls and women in the street. And, uh, he would talk to everybody. Even your first, when you lost your virginity, he just walked up to, I mean, you could tell that's a simple story, but yeah, a weird one. Most people would not do that, where he just walked up to these girls like in a Waffle House and was like, hey, my son wants to lose his virginity, or I don't, you tell the story. And then they're like, okay, like he's such a master storyteller that they're like, oh, he's so persuasive that they're like, oh, okay, yeah, sounds good.
And these girls are like, "Oh, well, if he's a virgin, you don't even have to pay us. We just do it for that alone." He's like, "Yeah, right." No, but absolutely incredible. Yeah, he just walked up to a couple of girls sitting in a booth at a Waffle House in the very late at night and convinced one of them to come home with us. And yeah, that was the end of that was the cure for my virginity, I guess.
Yeah, but this openness towards reality of like, okay, I'm gonna change this, whatever's happening in my life or in this world. Like I can do it. Things don't have to be the way they are. Like you said, that's what led to people like I don't know, say Winston Churchill or Andrew Carnegie or Elon Musk or who is bipolar. A lot of people are.
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yeah, creating great things and like experimenting and breaking the rules, and through that sometimes they discover new lands or new things like that. Like your dad was also playing with different plants, and he put things in his eye to fix his glaucoma, or I don't know, whatever. He put coffee in his eye, put these like plants in his eye. He would try to find these cures to his illness or his bipolar that did not involve lithium. And but like he could have discovered something. That's how people discover things. So it's not like totally insane.
Yeah, that was some crazy stuff. It was insane. He had discovered that putting banana oil in his eyes restored perfect
Yeah.
vision. Oh, and Karl, he would call me collect from Costa Rica to California saying, "You need to contact the US ambassador to Egypt. His name is something something Kahler, and ask him about the Kahler syndrome that runs in our family." I'm like, "Dad, you're totally freaking nuts." Or he had one time he had huge infections in his legs after a big fight with the police. And he was released, or he escaped from the mental hospital. And he drove up to Kansas to see me. And on the way, he went through Siloam Springs, Arkansas. And he was just out in the woods exploring. And he found a boulder and he turned it over. And there were a bunch of spiders underneath it. And he brought the boulder in the trunk of his car. And I said, "Dad, why do you have a boulder in the trunk of your car?" He said, "Oh, I found that in Siloam Springs." He said, "I turned that over and it had some spiders underneath it. Turned out to be the most dangerous spiders, the most poisonous spiders in North America." I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "I ate one." Uh,
Yeah, no, and it sounds like we're kind of like we're kind of jumping around, and there's a bit craziness to this conversation itself. We're like, well, what's the thing? What are we doing? But that's sort of, in a way, it's good because it captures like his sort of essence of life. It was like this. unpredictability of you couldn't really pin things down, and it was like whoa, 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 just craziness. So maybe I'm tempted to be like, let's have a central theme and let's do, but this is sort of what your dad was. So I guess we just kind of just do this.
Well, it's also worth noting that the vast majority of the time of his life, he was totally normal, and he was widely beloved by his family and his friends. And he was very supportive of his mother. He did live with her for many years, and he painted her house, and he mowed her lawn, and he went to the grocery store for her, and he changed her oil. And he called me every week, every Sunday. He called me. He called his son out in California. He came to visit us every year. um, he was a great dad, and he was usually normal. But the times when he's normal, it's like the stories aren't all that interesting. Well, he laid around in bed and read Leon Uris' book Exodus all day. It's not. He took a nap on his mom's couch from 3 to 4. It's not all that interesting. So the stories where he's totally nuts, of course, are the ones that generate the most interest. They get the most ink.
Yeah, no, I guess we all could, pull out a few stories from our life and make ourselves look this way or that. But with him, there's so many stories, so it's like, ooh, it's not a hard task. But it also kind of makes you remember that, yeah, these strange, wild, crazy things that we do, whether we're happy or sad in the moment, these are our life. This is a story, and if we just do these boring, laying in bed type things and don't take any risks or do anything outside of the norm, maybe our life will not even feel like a story, and maybe that we won't be even be happy.
One thought is that when he was not manic, he sometimes did things that were not really in his best interest. For example, he had fled charges of terroristic threatening in Hot Springs, Arkansas, because he supposedly pointed a gun at a woman who was in his house, and the police had his house and liquor store barricaded. He and I lived on a floor above a liquor store in the middle of Hot Springs, and the police had to surround the place all night with their lights on. And anyway, he escaped and went to Central America. But then he came back, and when he came back, he was totally normal. He was not a gun pointing madman anymore. He had lost the freaking liquor store. His mother had lost her shirt on paying his bail, which had to be forfeited because he fled. So he drove to Hot Springs with his mom and turned himself in to the police, and he ended up serving a year in prison for that. Or what was
Or like, yeah, okay, I know there's one you explicitly mentioned in the book is you joined a cult after your dad kind of faded out of your life. I think he must have been in prison or something. You were 17 or 18, and then you mentioned how had he been manic, he would have pulled you out of that and say, no, we're getting you out of here. You're not going to this cult. But he wasn't manic, and or he wasn't around, or I don't know. And so you were in this cult for 4 years. That was another example that you mentioned in the book.
7 years?
7 years. Wow.
7 years.
Whoa.
7 years from the time I was 16 till I was 23. Yeah. Yeah, he had fled that very thing, same thing, the terroristic threatening charges in Hot Springs. He had flown to Nicaragua. So I was fatherless. I was 17 years old. He had talked me into dropping out of high school, straight A student, dropped out of high school my junior year. So I had no job, I had no school, I had no friends, and my sage, my guru, my dad had abandoned me and fallen off the edge of the earth. So I was like, damn, what do I do next? So yeah, I did end up joining a cult. The one thing I would also say is if he was manic, if he had been manic when we returned from Bolivia, when I was 15 going on 16, he never would have surrendered me and Paul to my mom. He just kind of like handed us over. It's like, okay, well, they spent a year because they divorced a year before that. So me and Paul spent a year with dad, just us in Bolivia, and then we came back and he said, "Okay, well, your mom can you guys can go live with your mom now." And we went to live with our mom, and dad just fell into this state where he slept on his mom's couch all the time and didn't do anything for several months until one day he wakes up and he's like Godzilla stomping all over town again. He buys a liquor store in Hot Springs, and he decides to start a business buying and selling gold from the public. And yeah, You mentioned, entrepreneur. He was not a good entrepreneur when he was manic. He was extremely active. He was really into spending money and making money, but mostly spending money, but did not make good business decisions at all, and sometimes gave way too much money away. He would buy gold, retail and sell it wholesale. It's exactly what he did. When I say buy gold retail, I mean, like, one lady comes in with her gold teeth, another lady comes in with a silver teapot. So he would buy all that piece by piece, paying pretty good coin for it. But then later when he ran out of money, he found a rich friend to basically just sell the whole thing to sell it wholesale. So what he sold it for was far less than what he paid for it, but there was nobody keeping track. He didn't have an accountant.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I mean, the benefits of mania almost are the downsides of mania. It's just like it seems like it things just go too far. So because you can imagine if he was just sort of hypomanic or just a little bit manic, maybe he would have been more entrepreneurial or been able to balance, the whole thing. But otherwise, you believe in yourself too much and you take too big of risks. Yeah, was he ever like in this sort of weird kind of hypomanic state where he was like kind of just right, or was it just like normal or manic?
Yeah, Michael, I mean, it goes from all bipolar, states go from the very bottom of the trough to the top of the slide, and there are gradations. And, like, one day, he's totally medicated. He's been taking his medicine for a year and a half. He lays in bed and reads, or he takes a nap on his mom's couch, or he mows the lawn, or he goes to the store. But then when he says, I don't think I want to take so much of this medicine anymore. So he kicks back. He like takes half a dose of medicine, and all of a sudden he feels better. He's like, dang, I'm energetic. I have ideas. I feel like doing stuff. He wants to paint the house. He's not only mow the lawn, he's going to replant the garden. Okay, so that's good. That's good, right? He says, this medicine, I'm just going to stop taking it and see what happens. So he stops taking it, and at first it's great. He feels better. Bipolar is the one mental illness that makes you feel better at a certain point. But then he turns into Godzilla or King Kong, and he just has to get into a confrontation with everyone. He can't stay home, and he can't leave the house without speaking to crowds wherever he goes.
But you say he never got depressed. So in a way, he's bipolar, but he's sort of unipolar manic or something, or he's sort of towards that end. He never really dips too deep into the depression.
Speaking of that, yeah, yeah, yeah. He said, I've never been depressed in my life. I have never considered committing suicide in my life. So he says that. He says I was never depressed. And I trust him on that. But there were those times where he took a lot of naps, or he spent a lot of time in bed reading, or he just stayed at home with his mom doing nothing. So those were his low periods. And I remember in Lone Oak, we lived in Lone Oak, Arkansas, one year where he was never manic. And yeah, he would sleep. He would take a nap every day after work as a principal at the high school. And he looked back on that later and he said, I never want to be that same sleepy person not doing anything with my life. So he'd like to be a little bit manic, not so manic that he had to go to the mental hospital, but hypomanic enough to be able to get stuff done. And yeah, he bailed on that year in Lone Oak and moved us all to Alaska, Kodiak, Alaska, where within a few months he got totally manic again. He came home one day, he had a brand new blazing red 1975 Toyota Land Cruiser. He just went to the Toyota dealer and bought a brand new truck and drove it home without telling any of us that he had planned to do this or thought of doing this. He just showed up driving the new truck. What that? That's cool. I guess. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. But with regards to him saying he was never depressed, it kind of reminds me too of this recurring thing going on too with him, where he always, and we all do. Actually, we all do this. He just does it in a very obvious way. I guess we all do too. Where we take our story and we paint ourselves as like how we want to paint ourselves, as maybe the hero or as a good person or this or that. And maybe he just like, even there's memory issues with some of these stories, and he'll always paint himself as he'll cut out the bad parts and kind of exaggerate the good heroic parts. And depression is not something that's like really like I don't know. Like he clearly didn't want to be depressed or seen that way, and I don't think anyone really does. So I mean, it makes sense that he would be like, I wasn't depression, I was just sleeping, or maybe he just wasn't depressed. But I mean, there's this thing going on that we all do, where we try to make ourselves the hero of the story and forget the rest, or twist the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly do not think that he suffered, what what's known as major depression, which is the downside, the trough of bipolar is major depression. 20%, supposedly 20% of people in the world suffer major depression at some point in their life, supposedly. 1% of the population of the world supposedly is bipolar, and that would include bipolar type 1, type 2, and then cyclothymic or whatever. And supposedly also I've read that 1% of the world is schizophrenic. But yeah, I believe you said unipolar depression. If you look in the DSM-4 or 5, whatever they're up to now, Diagnostic Systems Manual, the Bible of Psychiatry, they do not recognize unipolar mania as a diagnosis. It has to be bipolar. But some people, I mean, there's lots of variations in this thing, and some people, my dad got extreme mania, extreme manic jags. But the depressive side was just kind of mild. He just lay around reading books, harmless guy, went to the store, mowed the lawn, nothing wrong with that. Other people, like we've mentioned, all the some of the Sylvia Plath, another famous bipolar, committed suicide. He never, thank God, he never reached those kind of lows where he wanted to end his life or where he was totally incapable of functioning.
Yeah, you mentioned how most of his life he was, he was totally normal, great, responsible guy. You did mention a few of those memories from that in the book where I don't think he was manic during these times. Maybe he was though, but they're very happy moments. He took you to the ice cream shop. You're playing catch in the backyard. You're just driving around. But also, yeah, of course, what made you happy is you got some one-on-one time with dad and feeling loved. But also, maybe he was just a happy, normal guy at those times.
He was a great dad. I think my brother is 2 years older, and I think my dad and my brother Paul always bonded closer in the early days, and me and my mom tended to bond closer. So we kind of divvied up when I in my childhood, and so yeah, it was rare when dad singled me out for his attention, like for playing catch in the yard when I was trying to learn how to play baseball to win the Little League championship in Lonoke that year, or when he took me, just me, to get some ice cream in Durango, Mexico. Just me. This is no mom, no Paul. I was allowed to sit in the front seat with my dad. It's like, dang, this has never happened before. Where just me and my dad go somewhere to get some ice cream.
It's a nice feeling. It's a very nice feeling.
Yeah, so that was nice, but he was normal. He was normal at those times. Other times driving around with him when he was totally batshit crazy, that also happened, but,
Yeah,
that's another story.
yeah. No, I can relate with that. Like I have 9 brothers and sisters, and I never got one-on-one time with my dad. I can only recall really two times. When I was going up to university, and he somehow went with me to check out the house. I was about to move into this like crack house basically. I didn't realize it, but I was about to like manage this halfway house. My dad saved me from that. My dad's not manic, but he was I guess alert enough to be like, this is a freaking halfway house that you're not going to manage. And then I remember there, laying in the hotel room with him, and he's like, "It's okay, I got some money, I can help you out." And I'm crying, and it's just so nice. And another time we went on a little. He had like a business trip, a reward. He's a insurance salesman, and we got a reward trip to Portugal. And my mom couldn't go because she was pregnant at the time, and I was like the most I don't know, eligible candidate as a kid for some reason. Age and interest in the business or whatever. So I got to go to Portugal with him. It's really nice. That was my first like really like prolonged time, only time with my dad, me and my dad, and that's super nice. So I know what you mean.
But are pregnant people not allowed to fly to Portugal?
They are. They're totally allowed. Maybe it's an excuse. I don't know, but or maybe she was just tired out. She didn't want to go. Maybe they're fighting. I don't know. they tell their stories. I don't know. But anyway, I was able to go. Mom stayed home. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah, she might have been super pregnant at the time. It's just like,
Okay. She didn't wanna have the baby on the freaking plane.
yeah, like that kind of vibe. I don't know. Pregnant, like she was permanently had that kind of thing with her. Anywhere she would go, like, oh, when's the baby due? I'm not pregnant anymore. But she was basically always pregnant, so the stomach never went down. Anyway, this is not about her or me, but yeah,
9 you have 9 brothers and sisters?
yeah.
Did your parents know what causes that?
Um, I yeah.
It's a little joke. There was a Groucho Marx, interviewed a guy on his show one time, and the guy said he's got 11 kids. He said, "11 kids? What do you do? 11 kids?" The guy goes, "I love my wife." And Groucho says, "Yeah, I love my cigar too, but I take it out of my mouth every once in a while."
Yeah, no, I would attribute it to Mormonism. They're Mormon,
Ah, okay.
and that's probably their like like your dad had missions from God. They have missions from God too, and one of that is go forth and multiply or something.
Yeah. I had a good Mormon friend in Mexico when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you and him would goof off in the back of the class, and they just gave you grades for nothing. Um, yeah,
You're a really great reader, and you have a good memory.
dude. No, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It was really. I'm not just like trying to say this, but it was really well written. The content was amazing, but then the way you wrote it was amazing. But it makes sense because you were writing from like you always loved writing. You always saw yourself as a writer, or at least early on. I don't know when that started, but that's sort of part of your identity and part of your habits from at least when you were a teenager. You were keeping a diary on your dad, and
No. It started when I was 5. I was just fascinated with I wanted typewriters, and my mom would take me to the college with her when I was 5, and I learned how to type. And I loved freaking typewriters, and I loved to write and write stories and write poems. When I was 4, before I knew how to read, I would look at a comic book, and I would see the word balloons, and I couldn't read them, but I would make up my own stories. So I'd say from the age of 4, looking through those comic books, making up my own dialogue for all the characters in the book. That's when I started writing in my head. And yeah, I'd always at first I was a poet, and then kind of a short story writer, fiction writer, and then ended up specializing in nonfiction. I hope I've contributed to the genre.
no, yeah, no, I didn't just read the book thoroughly just to prepare for this, but also I really enjoyed it. I've told so many people about this, and they're probably thinking, why are you interviewing this? The way it comes off when I start explaining it, they're like, oh, why are you talking to this like criminal kind of guy? I'm like, no, and it takes a while, but
No, my dad was the criminal.
no, not you, not you. Yeah, they're like, are you talking to him? Because he seems a bit unhinged. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking to him. He's unfortunately dead. I'm talking to his son who wrote the story. But it's like I'm just like sitting next to my coworker or something, like telling these stories. I shouldn't have told her that joke. I told her. She was probably aghast for me retelling the story. But I told her about how to turn.
Not the joke about the hobo in the park in LA.
No, even worse, how to turn the lime into a peach.
Oh, yeah. The one in LA was better than that hobo. Oh my god.
I told her that one too. I told her everything. I told her everything. Because like I'm like, you got 10 minutes. I'm just gonna blast you with a bunch of stories.
Oh my god, I'm sure she is traumatized. She's probably telling her therapist about this right now.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna get let go in a few days. But no, but your dad was these stories. I'm not telling them just because they're interesting. They're like we shouldn't be, of course, like oh yes, he's hurting people's property and stuff or whatever, and like shooting a cop. There's definitely bad things he did that we should not promote. But a lot of these things are really really funny. Like he's a really he's a hilarious guy, and you're a hilarious writer. I mean, it's like laugh out loud stuff. I don't know if you intended on that. You probably did, and I'm sure he did too. But you both are really funny, so that's another makes it fun to tell these stories and to read them.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people leave reviews like, "Oh, my heart was so heavy for the trauma that Karl endured and how supportive he was of his seriously mentally ill father." Like, okay, but it's a fun story. It's, you kinda wanna listen to it with a soundtrack of banjo music at times. What's he gonna do next?
Yeah. And like you said, like turning this into a Quentin Tarantino movie, that'd be even probably more digestible for people. People like to watch movies, and this would be a great one.
Well, I think one good hallmark of narrative nonfiction is that it's easily filmable. You could hand it to a director and he could just start filming because there's no question. It's not opinion. It's not an essay. It's not about politics. It's not about religion. It's not argument. It's not preaching. It's narrative. It's a story with a beginning, a middle, and end. And you can picture it. You can smell the smells. You can see the sights. You can hear the sounds. And mostly the action. Follow the action. Like in Jurassic Park, you ever see that movie?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was the first movie I saw in theaters. I'm 38, so I was like just right there for me to watch as for my first movie. Yeah, I was bragging about it. I was like, oh, I was in kindergarten or something. I watched Jurassic Park in the front row. No, you didn't.
Ah,
Yeah, I did. And that was like my
that's good.
claim to
Yeah.
fame back then.
Well, they opened that movie where they were trying to move a velociraptor to a different paddock, and he kicked and he opened the cage and he grabbed a man and he pulled him in and he ate him. That is narrative. This is, that kind of action to me, that's writing. Michael Crichton, of course, wrote the original book there. But make something happen. Don't tell me about your philosophies of life or don't preach at me or I do not like to read philosophy because where nothing happens. Like, tell me a story, listen to a story.
No, and I'm sorry today too. I was thinking like, okay, I should just be like, tell me some stories, but I got this weird kind of philosophical brain going on where whether I like it or not, or I'm trying to understand things and analyze them, and even our previous conversation, you're like, oh, it looks like you're into all this like kind of how to and what's going on, and like I'm about story, and this is something new to me, but I want to be better at storytelling. So, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's maybe overly analytical and
Make something happen. Make something happen. Make something happen. Make something happen.
make something happen?
Start the engine
Yeah.
of the story, and a story is a narrative that has a beginning, a middle, and end. I think language evolved when the cavemen they went and hunted a mastodon. They brought it back to the fire, and they cooked it over the fire, and then they told stories about how they hunted it, and they herded it into this place, and they threw stones on it, and they threw spears at it, and so yeah, it's like a story, something you could film, like cavemen hunting a mastodon. Just tells stories, beginning, middle, and end. Mostly action, action, action. And Jurassic Park starts with some music and a helicopter flying low over a jungle. But then pretty soon, and credits. But imagine if Jurassic Park went on for 2 hours with just the helicopter flying low over the jungle and the music. That would not work. So very quickly they get to okay, dinosaur eats a man. Oops. Rocky Rocky started Best Picture in 1975 or six, whatever. It started with almost 10 minutes of Rocky and another man pounding the hell out of each other. You had no idea who the characters were. It was just action. But then they moved to setting up the story where Apollo Creed decides he's going to give some guy a shot at the title. Yeah, if at any time, if you ever write something that is impossible to film, that is not narrative. If you spend 3 paragraphs writing your opinions, you're preaching about something or sharing your commentary. If you hand that to James Cameron, and what's he gonna do with it? There's nothing to do with it. He needs a story, a setting and a story, people doing something in life.
Yeah, and that's how your book opens up too. Your dad up in that sunroof with his gun up in the air, and trying to find Bobby's car, and then shooting it, and that's where that starts, and yeah, and then keeps going, action after action after action, nothing but action, and I guess that's why it's fun to read.
That's the idea. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's like 60 crazy stories in that book. I never counted them, but if you ever reading along and you run out of story, that's unusual because there's almost always another anecdote. Yeah, that's kind of my approach.
Yeah, but you were the sidekick in that story. You were the Robin to the Batman or whatever, and I wonder why. And it seemed that you really enjoyed that. It's something you look back upon with fondness, and you were kind of happy to be that Robin. It seems. I wonder why it was you and not your brother Paul or your mom or one of his brothers. Why? why was it you? I again, now I'm philosophizing like why, but I guess that's what people do on podcasts too.
Well, you already mentioned that I really liked it when I was singled out for my father's attention just to play catch in the yard or to go get an ice cream in Mexico. So in this case, I was his total disciple and he was my overlord. He was the guy who taught me how to be a man. And I was alone with him during many of these times when he was a manic, and I just loved that. It was kind of a first. He took me to Houston because I had a weird skin disease, and so Paul didn't need to come, Mom didn't need to come, but I was there with my dad, recovering from this disease I had, and yeah, part of it is just a son's love for his father, a son's kind of like adoration of his father, and I had no filters to understand Karl. He's crazy. He's crazy. You should not go shooting with him at cars. No. But I didn't have that. So I kind of like I actually thought that he did have some kind of incredible connection with the divine or the beyond or with whatever because he was so ultra confident and cool and extroverted and made so many friends and found girlfriends and he always had money or he acted like he did and yeah. So yeah, he was kind of a he was my role model.
Yeah, but then it makes you think that because you were this loyal disciple to this prophet of God, it kind of makes total sense that you're perfectly like lined up to enter the cult. And maybe again, like I'm reading into it, but it's like, oh, well, it makes sense. You go from what being a disciple to this prophet, now you're a disciple to these prophets or something. And you can totally say that I'm incorrect here, but it's like, oh, it kind of makes sense. Like, they kind of replaced him in a weird way.
I never really thought of that, but you may have something there. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. My entire family dissolved because my brother is 2 years older. He went off to college, so he's in college. He's meeting girls, and he's playing soccer, and he's smoking marijuana, and he gets his own apartment, so he's on. And my mom, she just got her second master's degree, and she's moving off to Gentry to be a teacher. And my dad is in freaking Nicaragua, fleeing from terroristic threatening charges in Hot Springs, and I was alone. And here were all these ambassadors for Christ, 8 lovely people who really love me and welcome me into their home and into their lives. And you may be onto something there. I never exactly thought of it.
Yeah, you're also onto something. Like I think it's the simpler explanation is you were alone, you needed connection, and these people gave it to you. But then there might be this added layer that I'm throwing on too. But yeah, simple enough. Like you were alone, and no one wants to be totally alone.
I had no job. I had no school. I had no friends. Now I had no mom, no dad, no brother. I was like on my own. So yeah, I latched on to some people who were there with arms wide open to sweep me in.
Yeah, you also wrote a book on that experience in the cult. We don't really have time to get into it today, and it's not the main topic. But maybe you can give us like a little trailer or something on that.
The cult that snapped. It's called The Cult That Snapped: A Journey into the Way International. Is the definitive expose of this group, The Way, Ohio-based Bible cult, which used to have some 40,000 members. They had bigger membership, I believe, than the Moonies or the Hare Krishnas. Not as many as the Scientologists, but they used to be one of the biggest, possibly the second biggest cult in America, depending on how you define cults. Nowhere near. Well, anyway,
Yeah,
like
you're gonna say the
Mormons or
Mormons? Don't
yeah,
do
the Mormons.
no.
Or some people say Seventh Day Adventists, or some people say Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay, it depends. Some people say, well, the Catholic Church is a cult, which is not. But it depends on how you define it. But yeah, so the book is the half of it is memoir, my experience, exactly what happened to me during my 7 years in the group, and interspersed with that are chapters about the history of the biography of the founder, and the whole history of the group and how it exploded into being very, very, very successful in the 1970s, and then how it collapsed when the founder died, and then all of his acolytes fell into infighting.
One other kind of set of topics I wanted to ask you about before we go to is drugs. Marijuana and alcohol seem to be a big part of your dad's life too, but again, maybe it's only during these stories. And talking to a lot of people with bipolar and learning a lot about study this stuff or whatever, it seems like alcohol and marijuana seem to be a kind of a part of it a lot of times. What kind of role do you think that played in the process? Was it just sort of a fun thing you did, or do you think it caused any of this, or
Yeah. My dad had a reaction to marijuana that is extremely unusual. Most people, they get, they're like these classic red-eyed stoners and they talk slow and then they fall asleep. No, it made my dad manic, and it tends to do the same to me. It make me kind of hypomanic. So, yeah, if he smoked weed, he couldn't sleep. And sleeplessness is both a symptom and a cause of manic episodes. Because if you're fine one day and then, oh, you just stay up, you smoke some weed and it makes you hyper and you don't sleep all night and you stay up the next day and you go jogging at 5 a.m., that can bring on a manic episode. And that happened to him time and time and time and time again. Uh, we used to have a big party every year in Chico, the Rendezvous, and there was always weed there, and he would always smoke. And sometimes it made him totally nuts, so crazy. Sometimes it sent him into crazy, crazy manic jags. The other thing I would say is that people with bipolar self medicate. So the thing about a lot of people use alcohol, a lot of bipolars, yes, they self medicate. They try to find a way to bring down the highs or to bring up the lows, or they smoke weed. Well, why? To be happy if they're sad, or if they're whatever. If they're too wound up, maybe they want to smoke a joint to sleep. So yeah, I would say that people with bipolar tend to self medicate with alcohol and drugs, and of course, that's always going to make it worse.
yeah? But yeah, I think you discovered something, or you didn't discover it. It's probably obvious. Just now, I realized it. Is these things can really disrupt your sleep? Like for me, if I smoke weed, if I drink, my sleep is messed up for days. I'm not sleeping well, and then that just creates a sort of downward spiral. Maybe towards mania. Not for me because I'm not. I don't think I'm full blown bipolar, but maybe a little bit like how you are. I think how do you react to these things? Does it also kind of amp you up a bit? It amps me up.
Yeah. Marijuana doesn't, and yeah, I'd say alcohol kind of makes me happy. And when I'm totally stone cold sober, I might be in a good mood, I might be in a bad mood, or I might not feel like doing much. Yeah, I tend to be responsive to certain triggers that make me feel better. Nobody wants to be unhappy. Nobody wants to hate their life or to sit around doing nothing all day, to lie around in bed. You kind of want to be active, and if you find something that kind of helps to activate you, maybe you stick with it.
It's interesting though, because like you do share, obviously your dad's son, so you're gonna share some of his genes, and these might be some of these bipolar genes. And I have like my older brother, he's homeless, he's bipolar. We're like a year apart, so clearly we must share some genes. So maybe like you, I don't know how this works. I'm not like a genetic scientist guy, but like maybe you got just the right amount of these like, kind of manic genes to where you could be a great writer and you could be creative, but you can still like manage your money and do all these things. And maybe I'm the same. Maybe my brother just got a little bit unlucky and I got like a little lucky.
And I've never shot at any policemen, and I've never tried to set anyone's house on fire. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think I do. I think I might be bipolar type 2, which is like Catherine Zeta-Jones from Zorro. She has been very open about it. She has bipolar type 2. Okay, and so what? Well, I don't know. I don't know. It it might put some jazz in your career. It might make you an entertaining person, somebody who's talkative, somebody who's happy, somebody who's extroverted and gregarious. And okay. So yeah, that's why I say that bipolar disorder is the one mental illness with an upside. It definitely has some positives, but when you start shooting at cops or when you want to jump off a bridge, those are some extremely serious downsides. So yeah, trying to find an even keel where you're happy and up and positive and engaged and productive and working. That's awesome. Freaking awesome. You could be Sylvia Plath. The next thing you know, Sylvia Plath sticks her head in an oven, and what was her name? Some poet walked into a river with stones in her sweater and sank to the bottom of the river and died. And that's what she wanted to do. That's just no, no, no. Those people need some serious help.
You sure that's what you want? Yeah. No, but there's also this theory that like Americans, immigrants in general, tend to have more hypomania, whether they're actually bipolar or not. They have more of that energy, more they're towards that side of the spectrum. And so there's this theory that why America has full of these entrepreneurs and creatives and stuff is like, well, they're like immigrants from other countries, and but we need these people in order to get these things done. So maybe, I mean, your family also. I mean, I guess they came from Germany. You are American. Your dad was moving around to different places. You were actually like a foreigner in many lands, so makes sense that like it's just in there. But I think we've already talked about this in the beginning. Like this is how we take action. Like this is how we get things done. If you're completely unmanic, you're depressed. There's no story. There's no action. It's just boom, But the more you kind of amp it up, the more action there is, the more story there is, for better or worse. But you kind of want it to be. We don't want our life just to be a crazy story. Then we're your dad, which might be better than most lives. But if we want to have like a normal, halfway normal life, then we can't crank up the mania too much. So it's like we're. It's kind of interesting. Like this is how we get things done. This is how we, don't just be like sitting on the couch or sitting in the office and just completely following the rules and being an obedient servant to society, which is fine too. But yeah, it's not a bad thing, but you can have too much of a good thing, right?
Well, yeah. Uh, again, Kurt Cobain, Winston Churchill, Ernest Hemingway, Vincent van Gogh. These are some of my greatest heroes of all time. Absolutely brilliant output, creativity, genius, originality. Jim Morrison, I don't know, but oh my God, was he a great poet? Was he a great star? Uh, Died in a bathtub in Paris. But there's a book. I wish I could remember the title. It's written by a great author about bipolar and creativity, about historical geniuses who were apparently.
Oh, maybe is it? I know there's one called Hypomanic Edge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where it goes through Christopher Columbus and it goes through like Andrew Carnegie and some of these other guys. I can't remember all of them.
I've seen that. I think that was self-published like 15 or 20 years ago, and
There's that one, or even there's a book that I think in the Molecule of More they mention this, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And sorry if I'm like trying to trying to understand you. We just met, and I'm like, oh, you are a little bit bipolar. Like, apologies for that, but I'm using it as a compliment. But lithium, you said worked really well on your dad. Whenever your dad took the lithium, he was really even keeled, and he was right there in the middle of the mood spectrum or whatever. What was he like when he's on lithium? And it seems like he didn't want to stay on it all the time, but it did work.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. Lithium or what was the other? There was a Depakote as a variant of lithium that if he would take those drugs, they would kill mania like Raid kills bugs. I mean, he would if he took the medicine he was supposed to take, eventually he would become totally normal again. And if he kept taking it, he would remain normal. And the only reason he went totally freaking balls to the wall crazy is he stopped taking it. By the way, A Touch with Fire, Manic Depressive Illness, and the Artistic Temperament is written by Kay Redfield Jamison. Kay Redfield Jamison, she's written 2 books about bipolar. She is bipolar, and she is a psychiatrist specializing in bipolar. She is the best author who has ever written about this subject. So Kay Redfield Jamison, Jamison. She wrote a second book about that, which is more of just a straight memoir. Uh, An Unquiet Mind. Kay Redfield Jamison. That was her memoir, An Unquiet Mind. She used to go jogging at 4 o'clock in the morning. Whatever. But she's publishing books. She's got something going on, right? I mean, depressed people don't publish books.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to make bipolar into this, like, great thing because it's not. Like you said, people die and get hurt and do bad things sometimes, and a lot of them do sink into depression. And mania is not always a fun state either. It can be very irritating and angry and frustrating state, and you're not sleeping, and that's not fun.
You may become very antisocial. You may become angry. You may become very anxious. You may become you hate everything. God damn it! You're manic, but you're not happy, and you come into conflict with people, or you shout at people who don't deserve to be shouted at. So yeah, that is a definite downside of mania is that you get too manic and everybody thinks you're crazy and they don't want to have anything to do with you because you're scary. Scary. You don't want to be scary. You want to be happy. You don't want to be scary.
People like happy people who are interesting people, or maybe a little bit funky. But once once you go too far into that sea, then yeah, people kind of run away and you become alone. I don't know who your dad's friends were. You were certainly one of his friends. When he went to jail, when he's in jail, he was making all kinds of friends. A lot of funny stories in that jail actually. That's a fun chapter to read. And then homeless people, but also like successful people too. So your dad he seemed really good at making friends. But then he would scare people away when he got too much. Yeah.
Yeah, he played bridge with John Wayne when he was a principal in Durango, Mexico. Durango was a town that had four movie sets, Western movie sets. So Bob Dylan came to town, John Wayne, and my dad. John Wayne had to hang out with somebody, so he hung out with the rich American ranchers there, and they invited Dad over. So he played bridge with John and the other couple while Anne Margaret was in the room playing pool. So yeah, he did okay. He was good at socializing when he was in his right mind.
Yeah. But he lost that autographed picture, which isn't the biggest deal in the world, but he lost a lot of things. And we're not going to be able to talk about. We're going to close this off in a second because it's like, and we can go on and on and on. Like you said, there's 60 plus stories. But yeah, he lost that picture. He lost a lot of things. He was good at hiding. He liked hiding things. He would like hide. He swallowed the false ID to not get caught. He used a lighter to set the things on fire in the jail. And he kind of hid that.
Yes,
When he cut up the seats in the bus, he
yes.
hid the knife in his shoe. When they caught him with the weed,
He said he had to go to the bathroom.
yeah, stop looking at me, guys. And he hid the leaves underneath that, with that poo. And then he hid. I don't want to spoil the ending, but he hid something very important. That's in the bottom of the Arkansas River.
Yeah, 11 gold Krugerrands would be worth about $24,000 in his brother's ashes. Yeah,
Yes, he's very good at hiding things. But some was too good.
tragic ending, true tragedy, especially the ending.
I know. I thought he was gonna find. I thought you were gonna find it, and it's gonna make a big, happy ending.
I did too. God damn it, I did too. I thought I was gonna find it. Why do you think I rented all this freaking scuba gear for 2 days and paid this North Little Rock police sniper diver $150 to come help me? I thought I was gonna find it. It was there. I know it was there.
It doesn't seem that hard. It doesn't seem that hard. You're finding a bunch of other junk down there. Like, why not? Why not that?
It was an engine of a car. There was all these. It was an extremely, extremely difficult, complicated, blind search environment. You couldn't see anything, and there was all this stuff you could just cut yourself on. But finding a little roll, it was about the size of your thumb, thicker, but about the size of a thumb. You're looking for something like that. It's worth $24,000. It's solid gold. Never found it. Sorry, I didn't have a happier ending. I wish I had.
No, it's fine, but that's life. That's how life goes. I mean, your dad died too. That was not a happy ending. You would have loved for him to live many more years. I would have loved for my mom to live many more years. But this is life, and whatever. That's just how stories go.
Sorry about your mom. Yeah.
No, no. Sorry about your dad too. Sorry. I mean, my mom was 60. Your dad was probably not too far off from that. I don't know how old he was.
Oh, he was older than that. Yeah, he was born in 1935, so I think he was 79. I think he was pushing 80.
Well, he did live they live a good life. And thanks for
He did.
keeping all those notes and as you know, as a kid and keeping those diaries and honing the skill of writing. And it all kind of came together in this book, which may not be a famous book yet, but or a famous movie, but I do recommend anyone to read this.
I really appreciate it, especially, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, if anyone wants to read the book, it's out there. You can go to my website, which is karlkahler.com. It's my first name and my last name, KarlKahler.com. You go there, there's a tab that says Manic Dawn. You click on that, and it has tons of options to order the ebook or the POD book. The easiest, obviously, is Amazon. You just go to Amazon. You can get either print on demand book is, I think it's 19.95, and the POD is 4.95.
Yeah, thank you, Karl.
It's been a great pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you. And thanks so much for your pitch for the book. I really appreciate it.